This is the Extratime.com League of Ireland Voice Notes season wrap, but there kind of isn't any such thing as an off-season anymore. We're already looking ahead to next season, and Shamrock Rovers are still playing. As we record this, they're preparing for a friendly. Then next week, they're back in Europa Conference League action. And of course, Derry City have appointed their new manager. We found out today as we record that the President's Cup will be in Talca Park on the 7th of February, which means I think the league now is down to start on Valentine's Day, which is fantastic. Gareth McGlynn, formerly of Derry City, and Bohemians, and Barry Murphy, both with me. Gentlemen, how are you both?
Oh, good, Oisin.
Yeah, not too bad.
Good. Gareth, as there's more recent news for you to examine, we'll start with you. Tiernan Lynch named Derry City manager. Had his first press conference today. What have you made of that appointment?
Yeah, they've moved swiftly. I think it was 3 or 4 days after Rory decided he was going to stay on at the club. Tiernan's come in. He was at quite a few of the matches last year. I saw him up at Inchicore. Funny enough, it was the night after they got beat by Shamrock Rovers at Windsor Park, and I was surprised to see him at the game. But he always kept a close eye in the League of Ireland. I know that obviously with Derry being one of the closest teams up around the Northwest in the League of Ireland, he was in the Brandywell quite a lot. But obviously he was going to go to St Johnstone. For some reason that kind of broke down. So he obviously had his eye out on a move from Langan after 7 very good years. Took him out of the Championship, won back-to-back leagues, and of course got them into the Conference League group stages. So I think he must have thought that the project was nearing complete and he needed a new fresh challenge.
And his teams play really good football. I've been lucky enough to be up in Inver Park a couple of times in the last couple of years. I've been lucky enough to chat to Tiernan. He comes across very well. Regard yourself, Gareth, you had very strong words about the Derry players after the Sports Direct FAI Cup final. Did you get any blowback, or could anyone say anything to you? Because I don't think you said anything wrong. I think your analysis was perfectly accurate.
No, I mean, listen, the players know. They don't need me to tell us. They were hurting. Rory was hurting. The chairman was hurting. The fans. I mean, I think it was 22, 23, maybe even 25,000 fans that made the trip up there. The first half wasn't bad. Second half, nowhere near the standards. I think there's no question on the technical ability of this Derry City team. But when it seems to be put up to them, they just don't seem to have the heart. Now, it's kind of easy to tar everyone with the same brush. There's obviously players there that are trying their best. I think it was a culmination of things. I think it was a culmination of frustration. The fact that 6 months before the end of the season, there was so many players out of contract. I think that was a club problem. I think that the club needed to either rectify that with the players, so bring the players in and say, listen, you're not part of the plans next year. Give us your all for 6 months and then we'll part ways. Or here's a contract, stay on with us next year. I mean, there's probably, I don't want to start naming names, but there's probably 8 or 9 players out of contract. 4 you would keep, 4 you would probably say thanks for everything, but see you later. But the 4 you keep are now out of contract. Tiernan's got a problem now. Have those players already signed pre-contract agreements? It's just not good management off the field, and I think I've been quite vocal of that, of Derry City of late.
Yeah.
Off the pitch, they are miles off winning the league and winning and doing anything with that would suggest, like, Derry will win the league every 20 plus years the way they're set up right now, but winning the league back to back or having any sort of sustained period of success is miles away.
Give me an insight into that. Do you mean the supports around a manager? Like, there's not a director of football or an equivalent, or there's not a full-time admin, or because I know there's really dedicated volunteers around Derry City, and if they win the cup last week, we're probably having a bit of a different conversation. But
no,
what
do
you mean by that?
No,
we're not.
We're not.
Okay.
No, that would have been painting over the cracks, and I've said this. I've written locally here for Derry Now in the Derry News, and I've outlined it very clearly. There's no question the people in the club right now are absolutely incredible. Every last one of them. They are tirelessly working to keep the club at this level, support the manager, but they just need more people. And I'm talking about full-time people with a long-term strategic vision and a blueprint. There is nothing like that. It is literally fly by the seat of their pants, live for tomorrow attitude, which is not how a football club should be run. Now,
Okay.
you look at all the other clubs around the country, they have clear structures in place, clear processes in place, clear full-time academy, commercial, manager, technical directors, director of footballs, community liaison officers. Derry City have next to nothing.
Okay. Well, look, I think I speak for everyone here when I say best of luck to Rory Higgins, a good man, a very good coach. As always with these things in football, it rarely ends in success. But he'll be sought after and he'll pop up somewhere else. Tiernan Lynch sounds like the right man to take on the football project, but also all the things you just mentioned there, Gareth, because he has built a club at Larne. People forget that. And there's an article by Brendan Crossan, which is well worth reading, about Tiernan Lynch's time in Larne. And if people want to get to know him and know about him, then that's certainly well worth reading. Barry Murphy, how are you?
Yeah, good. Not too bad.
Good. The season hasn't really ended for you. As we speak, you're prepping for Shamrock Rovers against Helsinki. That's a friendly game to help Rovers prepare for their next Europa Conference League game. But regards domestically, what did you make of it as a season overall?
Listen, it's been brilliant. In terms of exposure for the league, personalities in the league, a title race right until the last minute. It's exactly what this league needed. And when you've got the likes of Damien Duff and Stephen Kenny coming back into the league and really promoting it just by being in it and their personalities alone, you need the football to be of a standard as well. That's going to keep people coming to games and not just say, oh yeah, Damien's managing them and not come again next week. But to have it go down to the final day is exactly what the league needed. And the standard has gone up this season, I think, as well, in terms of quality and players on the pitch. And obviously Rovers now and St. Pat's European one as well has had that little bit of credence and kind of things you need for people outside the league to go, oh yeah, that league is actually coming on a bit now. And because a lot of people will judge it by FAI Cup crowd, FAI Cup final crowds and how teams do in Europe. That's their litmus test. But for teams to go on and do well in Europe as well as do okay in the league, that's where it's kind of progressed this season.
Does the way the league ended and how Shelbourne won it, does that suggest there's a depth of quality, Gareth? Or does it suggest, as some have said, there's a lack of quality? That they kind of effectively fell over the line?
No, it's a depth of quality. I'm not having that argument that the quality is not there. All the players are of a serious quality. The athleticism, I finished in 2016. And even then, the 3 years that I was out of the league, when I came back, I saw the leaps and bounds that they've made in the just the development of the players, the speed of the players, the athleticism, and the technical ability as well. It just seems to be spread out a lot more. And then I think I mentioned before, I think it's down to the quality of the managers. You saw this year not as much points gotten, not as many goals scored, not as many chances created. That's down to how organised and how dedicated the managers are to the job. And I just think the quality is more spread out. As simple as that. You see the players. There's 3 or 4 players in every team that would get into the other teams. You know, even Dundalk, who went down. You've got Darrell Horgan, Andy Boyle. You've got these quality players that are got relegated but fighting a relegation battle. And throughout the teams, you could see all that. Galway, Waterford, Drogheda. We saw it in spades in the Aviva a couple of Sundays ago. It's just well spread out, and the managers are of a different level. I think the managers are, and even their number twos. You look at the management teams. You look at them. Not only the number one are good managers and a good technical ability, dedicated to cause. The number twos now are coming into the fore, and if you don't have a number two, it's not just enough now to have a good manager. You've got to have a good package, whether it be opposition analysis, physios. It's just gone up levels.
Yeah, it's a good point from Gareth about the number twos as well. And if you look across the water to the likes of Man City, Arsenal, it's the number twos, Liverpool as well, that people are kind of looking at. Are they going to be the next managers to go on and take a team in that league? And that's sort of happening in this league at the moment. You look at Joey O'Brien at Chelsea, and you think if the likes of Stephen Bradley decide to move on and go to pastures new, he'd be someone that Shamrock Rovers would be looking at because he got that quality. And you just look around the league, Glenn Cronin at Rovers as well, just everywhere the number twos, as Gareth has said. And the backroom staff, you go to any games now and the backroom staff is as big as the playing squad now. And that's just something that wasn't kind of around. And when we were playing kind of 4 or 5 years ago, it's sports analysis, the physios, the doctors, there's club psychiatrists now that travel with every team. Everything has just got much more professional. And you look at the age profile of the league, it's come right down as well. And that quality is staying in the league now thanks to Brexit as well. You're not losing those players to England too early. They're getting a chance to progress here, and that's adding to the quality of the league as well.
The League of Ireland Hero of the Year is Nigel Farage. Who saw that coming? Is it a bit of an odd one, gentlemen, that Shelbourne, who are still rightfully celebrating their title, aren't one of the favourites? I think they're like fourth favourite. I haven't looked at the odds. I don't gamble. I don't encourage gambling, but just apparently they are fourth favourites for next year.
Yeah, 25-1, I think they're at.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah. Well, they were this season. I think it wouldn't be far out. It won't be that this season, coming into next season, but they won't be one of the top favourites, and that's exactly where Damon will want them. That's kind of what he used to go into this season.
How is that though? How is that?
Because Rovers can't be as bad as they were this season. Derry will come back strong. St. Pat's are going to be, look at the way they finished, 9 wins on the trot with an ex-Ireland manager in at the helm there. They just feel that these teams are going to have to come good and they just can't be as bad as they were this season. And, Shell's had a great season, but any team would have worth their salt, should have taken advantage of that blip coming up to the last third of the games. And they really shouldn't have been in a position to go and get over the line the last day. And Rovers will rue those kind of mid-season results as will Derry.
Gareth,
yeah, but Oisin, I mean, that's what you want. You want 5 or 6 clubs going for the. You don't want it to end up like a Scotland where you've got 2 teams fighting it out every year and the rest of them just struggling along, trying to keep up and trying to go for third place in a European spot or maybe get a run in the cup and flirt with relegation. That's what you want. You want a league, and I'm trying to think across all the major leagues in Europe. A league like ours, and this is where I just don't get it. People trying to slag it about quality and all that there. It's incredible. You've got to enjoy it while it lasts, because let me tell you, if you turn around and see Rovers winning it by 21 points next season, it will be boring as hell, because that is what you want. You want clubs going on, having a realistic chance of winning the league, having a realistic chance of getting into Europe and making serious cash in the Europa Conference League, and having a realistic chance that if they're not up to speed, or they don't get their recruitment right, or they don't get their manager right, or they don't get their number 2 right, or they don't get off the field right, that they've got a realistic chance of getting relegated. That you cannot beat it. It's incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. Speaking of incredible, what Drogheda did this season, Barry, that's incredible, isn't it? I mean, a part-time team, I know there's an argument that some of their players are full-time or whatever, but I would suggest the least resourced team in the league to going and winning the cup. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you think like their target was probably to stay up at the start of the season in any way possible, and they just did that. But in stark contrast to Dundalk, the mid-season signings made all the difference. Getting James Taylor in, Luke Dennison, Hui and Shane Farrell, that kept them up and won them the cup. And it's brilliant stuff from Kevin to manage that situation so well. And you just talk about things going right off the pitch, and Travella has come in as an ownership model, and they didn't panic. They could have panicked early on and done something rash in terms of the managerial situation, and new owners can tend to do that sometimes with the current manager and make a decision to change things when things weren't going right early. They didn't. They stuck with Kevin, knew he had quality about him. He just needed a couple of new signings in the window, and we're prepared to stump up those funds to go and do that. But you look at the players on the pitch, it was nearly the same starting 11 every week, bar a couple in the middle with Darren Markey coming in a couple of times and switching it in there. But they could, if they'd have started that way at the start of the season, God knows where they'd be at the end. They could have been challenging for Europe with the form they found. But just to go in, and they got everything right again the last kind of couple of weeks of the season, nearly had that 3-week break on into the cup final. They kind of knew where they were going to be in terms of Dundalk already been relegated, so gave them a great chance, where Derry were still fighting to come into the last week of the season, gave them a great chance to go in and look ahead to the final, and they took full advantage of that. Just totally tactically outplayed Derry on the day, and with the heart of the players as well. Those two married together, they were unstoppable all of the day.
And Gareth, that is why Kevin Doherty is the manager of the year, and there's not even an argument.
Oh, you're putting it out there, Oisin. Is that done? Is it?
There may be a slight bias because Kevin is a friend of mine. He and I used to do a podcast from his kitchen. So there's, whereas Damien Duff, I think I've met 3 or 4 times. So there's a slight bias. All jokes aside,
Well,
it's him,
you do
Caulfield,
know
and Duff.
when you work on this kind of stuff, you can't have bias.
Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even it's funny. I watched them in June, right up in the Brandywell, and they were beat 5-1 by Derry. And I honestly thought that after that night, now this was before they made all the signs and before the end of the transfer window, and I really worried about Kevin. They weren't good. Now they had quite a few injuries that night. Derry played well, but a 5-1 tank, and at that stage of the season, they were struggling for form. But what happened after that can only be described as a serious turnaround. Yes, you can throw a few pound at it, which the owners did. You got to spend it right. Everybody thinks that just because if you have some money, it automatically results in success and wins on the board. That's not the case. You've got to spend it well. You've got to know the players that you're getting in, and you've got to recruit well. I think Kevin has got this cup final win purely because of the work that he's put in over the last 3 or 4 years. Every time he signs new players, he betters those players and they move on. You think of the players that left last year that are now playing in the league. They're starring with those teams as well. So I think thoroughly deserved. I think that the cup final they couldn't have thought that it worked out any better. It was a masterful.
And look, Drogheda may have increased resources, so maybe they will become a big club. Well, they're the cup champions, so you can argue now they are. But if a big job becomes available, Barry, you're looking at Kevin as next man in if he chooses it, surely. Sorry, I know I sound like he's hype guy, but just looking at the facts of what he's done this season, I don't think I can be accused of bias by saying what I've just said.
There will come a point where
I'm on 10% from Kev, by the way. Kev gives me 10%.
The bigger the move, so yeah. But there will come a point where Kevin's got a decision to make. So like Tiernan at Larne, has he brought them all as far as they could possibly go? And that will depend on what Travella are prepared to put into the club as well in terms of moving them on. And you just look at around the club and how they're talking about developing the ground again. Obviously, you didn't get the infrastructure funds, so that'll be a little bit delayed there. But if a big club does come in, is it now a chance for Kevin to really go on and improve his kind of pedigree as well? And I'm sure that's something he'll be looking at really, really hard.
Yeah, I think I think Kevin's shown his loyalty. I mean, there was talk of Bowes and there was talk of Cork coming in and speaking to him and taking down there. I think Kevin now, obviously with the extra budget, the extra money now going into Europe next year, I think he's going to fancy that project a little bit more now. And I would imagine his budget's going to be much, much bigger next year.
Yeah, it'll be the end of that season, next season, I think, where he'd probably have the decision to make.
Yeah. And think of the potential that Drogheda has, a huge potential fan base, an already big fan base, judging by what we saw at the cup final. I always say the cup final brings out your potential fans. You'll have people going to that game who won't follow you week in, week out, who won't go to United Park, but they're potential fans. If you can give them a reason to come back, they will. And you could see the potential fan base they have. Pretty amazing stuff. I want to talk about the players of the year and the performers of the year. The PFAI team of the year is Brendan Clark, Paddy Barrett, Dylan Watts, Joe Redmond, Pat Hoban, Johnny Kenny, I beg your pardon, Mikey Duffy, Josh Honohan, Mark Connolly, and Mark Coyle. Now, obviously not in that order. The graphic is a bit strange the way they have it laid out, but is there anyone in there that, or would you think, gentlemen, there's anyone else who could have been in there?
I think, Sean Gannon's got to be in there.
Yeah.
Just straight off the bat, I think just for his magical power alone of managing to win leagues with whatever team he goes to, I think that has to count for something. But probably something. There's a few I disagree with. I don't see how Connolly gets in that team. I just don't.
Are you basing that on the cup final though?
No, I'm not. I think he's been bang average this season. I think it hasn't helped him where he's had a stable centre half partner with him, but I just don't see how he gets into that team. And sometimes the higher profile teams get players in it to try and spread it around, but I can't see how he gets in it. I think there's been better centre halves in the league this season, and obviously this you look ahead, like Porrick Ammon's just been incredible, and you'd wonder where Waterford would be without those goals. You look at them, their next highest goal scorer was Asamoah, who left in July with 6 goals. So just how good he's been down there, and there's probably a few others that could put their hand up to be in that team as well.
Yeah, I think to me, I would have Cairns and Nets. I would agree with Barry on Gannon. I would have Dale Rooney in there from Bows. I think if you look at the goals and the assists and the penalties won and the chances created, I would have Brandon Kavanagh in there as well for the same reasons. I mean, Brandon Kavanagh is a funny one. Stephen Kenny, obviously. Stephen Kenny comes into a club and he creates a competitive environment. Brandon Kavanagh, when Stephen came in right away, wasn't first choice. He got in through Palmer's injury and he stayed in, and that's what Stephen Kenny does. If you go in and you do well, you create goals, you do your job, you score goals, he will keep you in, and he rewarded him. But Brandon knew when he was getting in there, because of the competitive environment behind him, that he had to either score, assist, and goals during the games, and it brought the best out of him. So if you look at the games that he's played, the amount of goals and assists and chances created, I think he's got to be in there too. And Amond as well. I would have Amond up front, and that would be it. The rest of it's pretty self-explanatory.
The Player of the Year nominees are Padraig Amond, Mikey Duffy, and Dylan Watts. I'll ask you two different questions here. The first is, of those three, who do you think is the Player of the Year? Gareth, you can go first this time.
None of them.
Well, we'll get to who you think is your actual Player of the Year, but of these three, who are the PFAI? I appreciate that Dan and Johnny do the official PFAI podcast. But this we can go. We'll pick our own Player of the Year, but also of the three that are officially nominated, who would you choose? One of them will be Player of the Year this weekend. I think it's named.
So Michael Duffy, I would have watched the most. So he came really strong at the end of the year, but had an injury at the beginning of the year. So if you're talking about performing week in, week out throughout the season, Watts was exceptional. Probably from that goal up in Derry, he was by clear the best player in the last probably 8, 9, 10 games. But over the season, Friday, Monday, games played, contributions at his age, I would give it to Amond.
Okay. Of the three that are nominated, and you can pick your own Player of the Year if it's outside of the three at the moment, but of the three that are nominated, Barry, Padraig Amond, Mikey Duffy, Dylan Watts for you, who gets it? Or who should get it?
It has to be Dylan Watts for me. I think just by his contributions alone, you look at the goals up in Drogheda, Derry, his goals against Applewell. You know, the way he's played in Europe, I think he's just been sensational for the last, as Gareth said, 9 or 10 weeks of the season. And that's the business end. And he's nearly single-handedly dragged the goal in Dundalk as well. Yeah. Nearly single-handedly dragged Rovers back into a title race and progressed them on to 7 points in the Conference League as well. And by his goals, I just think he's been, of those three, the Player of the Year.
Would you have played with Padraig Amond when you were at Rovers?
Yeah, he was a young lad coming through. I remember saying to him down in Athlone, we were playing in the first division at the time. He'd just come onto the squad at that stage and saying, hang in there, make sure you get yourself a first division medal and see what happens next year. And he started scoring goals straight away, and you just knew there was something about him. He just had that knack of finding the net, and by hook or by crook it would go in, and that's what you want as a striker. And he's continued that over in England, and back here again, he doesn't show signs of stopping either.
And he's had a great season, 14 goals. I think Waterford's Player of the Year, has signed a multi-year contract, so is staying there. Even back then when you played with him as a young guy, was he the kind of guy you wanted around the panel, even outside of what he did on the actual pitch? Because it seems at Waterford that he's a leader. He's not just a player. He's not just a hired hand.
No, he's a brilliant fella. He was just so quiet when he was with us. I think he was only 17 at that stage, and his dad would be up standing on the sideline at the training ground. He nearly had special dispensation to be at the training ground with him, and he's just grown into a leader. Now, you listen to his interviews after and how much he's taken on that role in that Waterford dressing room, and that comes from playing in the harsh leagues in England and getting battered around and different experiences of contracts in different clubs. And he can bring that experience back, and he seemed to pass it on. He seems to relish that as well, to go and do that at Waterford.
Yeah, well, I had a long chat with him today for my own radio show on KCLR, and he's loving life at the moment. He's loving the League of Ireland, and I didn't realise it was a 14-year gap between when he left and came back, but he said it's leapt forward in so many ways. Right, so those were the PFAI nominations. Who are your players? You can pick any player you want here. Gareth, I'll start with you. Who's your Player of the Year and why? And you can talk about, okay. I kind of killed the
100%.
dramatic moment there. So you can nominate a few people, and then you can tell me why Paddy Barrett is your player of the year.
No, I think just Paddy Barrett. I mean, if you think about what he did, I mean, the league was won on defence. If you look at what Shelbourne did, Shelbourne weren't going to score a load of goals. They knew they couldn't concede goals. Damien Duff knew they couldn't concede goals. The squad knew they couldn't concede goals. If you think even about the last game of the season up in Derry, Derry had scored something like 33 goals at home. They won 9, which was one off all-time best since 2006. They were flying, and Paddy Barrett then lost his second in command, Malloy, who went over to Aberdeen and has started over there as well. He's had Ledwidge in for most of the season as well, but it hasn't fazed him. He's been the mainstay. He's been the guy that's basically dragged him through a lot of games. And not only his defending, I mean, he's not, would he be 6 foot, maybe 6'1", his aerial ability, but his distribution from the back and his decision making, his short passing and his long passing. If you remember back to a lot of the goals he scored middle of the season with Jarvis, it was his pass that set it up a lot of the times. I think it was against Rovers. He split the two defenders and Jarvis ran in behind. But for him, all round mainstay, won the league. Well, pivotal to them winning the league and having the defence to go win the league.
Is there anyone who wasn't nominated that you think could have been, or that you thought was outstanding this season?
Me?
Yeah.
Josh Honohan.
Okay.
I thought he was very good.
Yeah, incredible.
I think he's one of the players. He came from Cork as a fullback, right? And he was doing really well. I saw him a couple of times in the first division, really well, but he was more of a defender. He has actually improved his game now. That's obviously to do with the internal competition within Rovers, the training, the development he's getting at Rovers. But he's playing left wing back. I saw him in the Brandywell. Rovers didn't create much in the Brandywell that game that it ended up 1-1. He was playing left wing back and he was actually going like a winger. He was bursting past people. He was bursting into the middle of the park. He's added to his game. He obviously has a growth mindset where he's not happy or content with what his basics are or what he's good at. He's always improving. So he's one to me that's come on leaps and bounds this season and could probably go across.
Now, Barry, I ruined the dramatic tension of Gareth unveiling his player of the year. So I'm going to be really clear with you. Tell me who you thought impressed you this year, name a couple of players, and then tell me your player of the year.
Yeah, I think Gareth's right. He's talking about Paddy. He's been excellent. He's kind of got that quarterback role because Shells don't kind of thread passes in behind. They just aren't that sort of team. They're kind of a team that'll hit long, look for knockdowns off Boydie and kind of get set up attacks that way. And Paddy Barr has been instrumental in that sort of thing. And then you look at Josh Honohan, he was excellent. He's played left wing back, right wing back, centre half. He played so many positions for Rovers, and it's so hard to hit the ground running at Rovers in your first season. I think it usually takes the players a season or two to settle into the pressure of that club, and he's been excellent. But for me, I think my player of the year is probably someone like Sean Boyd. I think he's been so underrated in terms of the quality he's brought and his goals towards the end of the season and what he's come through this season. You could just see how emotional he was up in Derry as well. And I think to take that mantle on, and where Duff has obviously said to him, you need to be our talisman, you need to go and win this league, and he's the one that's come up with the big goals towards the end of the season to go and do that for them.
Okay, just before I let you go, gentlemen, your hopes for 2025. Barry, I'll start with you.
I hope we've half as good a season as we had this season. I think we just need to keep that ball rolling and that competitive nature, and that teams are that close to each other. And I think it will be. I think it will be more like the Premier League has been in terms of league totals, team totals in terms of points. I think it'll be a lot less points dropped by the bigger clubs. Pats, I think, are going to be the benchmark team next season, and it'll be up to Rovers and the likes of Derry to get up behind them and get as close to them. And anyone that I think stays ahead of Pats will go on and win the league.
Gareth?
More of the same, Oisin. More of the same, please. You couldn't ask for better this season, and I'm hoping it's going to be just as good, if not better, next season.
And Bowes have signed pretty well. Of course, Bowes, another one of your former teams, Colin Whelan, the Kilkenny man coming from Derry City, and Niall Morahan signed from Sligo Rovers, and probably more to come.
Who goes down, Oisin, next year? It's
who goes down?
Yeah, it's incredible. You've got Cork coming up. That's going to be as big a battle as the top of the league. Like, it's going to be so close, and Bowes could either have an incredible season or be relegation favourites.
Well, do you know what? And sorry, I was kind of I was taking the mick earlier on about Dan and Johnny doing the official PFAI podcast, but Johnny made a great point that if Bows had a striker this season, they could have been in the hunt for Europe and not fighting relegation. And they have a striker now for next season if they can keep Colin Whelan fit. Big if for any player, of course, and putting it all on one player.
They need to get their identity back, though, I think, Oisin. They need to get their identity and kind of camaraderie back with the fans. I think that's a massive thing at Dalymount, is to have them on side. And if there's any sorts of kind of murmurings or ifs and buts in the crowd, the way there has been this season, and it's a big decision to stick by Rennie already this season, but they made that they made that error last year where they gave Declan Devine 9 or 10 games into the season and then had to make a decision. So to stick by him now, and he's obviously made those early signings to try and make things right for next season.
Listen, I appreciate identity is an issue with me because I'm a Waterford man who supports Cork City and commentates for St. Pat's, but I'm going to defend my fellow Waterford man here and say Reynolds did a good job last season. Was it perfect? No, but he was dealing with a weak enough squad. And I don't know I saw Bulls fans calling for his head, and I was like, have you been watching your team for the last couple of years? Do you realise the shite show that has been your club for the last couple of years in a footballing sense? But anyway, there we go. Gentlemen, last question. What are you going to do with your Friday nights from now until Valentine's Day?
Yeah. Well, my Thursday nights are taken up for the next couple of weeks anyway with the Conference League football, but then you've got Christmas and then you've got lovely cold pre-season games to go and see, so there's not too much time off.
Yeah, can't wait to see Trialist A performing for Athlone in a pre-season friendly against Bulls. Gareth, you're going to keep riding for Derry now? We're going to be able to... No? Take a break for a wee while?
Done, yeah. One season, got everything off my chest. Now I can step back and relax. I need some time off. I need a break. Okay. Those things are all well and good until you actually have to sit down and do them.
Yeah, well,
you've got that first album syndrome. You can't come up to the second one.
but there'll be good new material and original storylines for next season because there's new characters, Gareth. There's new characters. Gentlemen, really appreciate your time as always with the extratime.com stuff. It's all voluntary. None of us are getting anything for doing this. You're just doing it for the love of it. And I know that the League of Ireland is something that you love. And not everyone will agree with the opinions expressed here, but that is one of the beauties of football. It's one of the reasons that we follow it. Barry Murphy and Gareth McGlynn, thank you very much. It's very early to be saying this, but I might talk to you before Christmas. Well, Barry, I might see you at one of the Rovers games in Europe. But if I don't see, happy Christmas and thanks for everything that you've done for extratime.com this season. That's it for the extratime.com League of Ireland Voice Notes podcast, the wrap-up one for the season. Not any voice notes on it, of course, so, we're guilty of false advertising, but there we go. As always, you can get me on @Oisin Langan. I'm hanging on in there on Twitter. I'm not going to yet another social media app. I just don't have the time. I'm like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. I'm staying. And that's where the similarities end. But there we go. That's it. Extratime.com for all the latest on Irish football. Thank you for listening.